Thank you for joining us again tonight as we continue on our study in Genesis 23. We have set down a foundation now of Hebron. That's where Sarah died at. That's where Abraham is now in the process of trying to purchase property to bury his wife. We've talked about it's a Levitical city, and we've talked about where the Levi, the tribe of Levi or Levi came from, how they came into being, and about the 48 Levitical cities that were in Israel at that time. Well, let's get on with Genesis now that we've got the background set. Sarah lived to be 127-year-old. She died in Kiriath Arba, which is Hebron in the land of Canaan. And Abraham went to mourn for Sarah and to weep over her. Well, the question beckons is, where was Abraham? Wasn't she there when she died? I don't know. The Bible doesn't really say. But he does say that he came to mourn for Sarah, and there he mourned for her. And you know, God has set aside a time for mourning. In Ecclesiastes 3 and 4 it says there's a time to weep and a time to laugh, a time to mourn and a time to dance. There is a time for all things. And as sad as death is, and the sorrow that it brings in that temporary separation, the proper response is mourning and weeping, but for a season. Then Abraham, and in verse 3, he rose from the bedside, the bedside of his dead wife, and spoke to the Hittites. He came and he mourned. But then he rose. And folks, mourning should not be a lifestyle. Sorrow should not be a lifestyle. I know that people miss the good times and there is separation and there is a season of mourning, but it should be for a short time, and then the Lord wants us to move on. He's got something greater for us. Mourning should not become a lifestyle or should not last for a lifetime. I know people that are mourning for years over their husband or over their child. And I understand how sorrowful having my son and our son, Sid and our son, pass away. But it's not a lifestyle, because God has got a future for us. Our people that have gone on before us are not in our past. They're in our future. And that's why we press on into things of God, looking for that one day when we're all reunited with the Lord Himself. Ecclesiastes 3 and 1, to everything there's a season. There's a time to every purpose under heaven. And Abraham then got up. And I think that we need to get up from things that are in the past. We need to get up from the usual way of doing things. We need to get up, especially in this new year, from our old habits and leave our old habits behind and pick up some new ones. We need to get up from our old circumstances and press forward into the future of what God's got for us. You see, God's a God of the present. He's not a God strictly limited to the past. And He's a God that's got a future for us all. And Jesus declared that future in John 11 and 25, when He said, I am the resurrection and the life. He that believes in me will live even though he dies. And whosoever lives and believes in me will never die. Then He asked them, do you believe this? So I ask you, do you believe this? Abraham, he was a stranger. He was an alien in a foreign land, so to say. And here this stranger, this alien, comes to the Hittites, who basically own all the property there. And he says, sell me some property for a burial site here so I can bury my wife. You see, I want you to understand that back in those days, when somebody died, they wanted to get them buried, preferably that same day, if they could. They didn't want to tarry with their body out of ground. They had no way to preserve it. And at that point in time, they wanted to bury right then and there. And this conversation took place in Hebron, more likely at the city gate itself. And the gate was a place of meeting. It's where business actions were taking place. It's where all the people came in and went out, and it was a very public place. Folks, as our time runs out tonight, I want to encourage you to leave some old things behind in this new year and press on into the new things that God has got prepared for us all.